You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 330th episode of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 1028th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of April 11th, 2024. I'm your host, the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment is going to be a little off the cuff. I was busy watching the Masters, pulled in about 5 minutes ago. And so I'm just going to talk about a couple things that I'm glad happened this week. One is Terry Morin staying at Indiana after hearing, I guess, some calls for her job to go to Tennessee. Coach Morin has done what all basketball coaches should do, and that is build a winning program that is sustained from year to year. She gets portal players in, but she also recruits, and she builds a continuous winner year in and year out. There will be some down years ahead, as every program does face from now and then, but Terry Morin has done an outstanding job, and it's just good news to be able to retain Coach Morin. That doesn't mean she'll be here forever. There might be a job or a situation where she moves on in the future. But what she has done here at Indiana is what a lot of coaches in a lot of programs across all sports need to do, and that is demand excellence, hold people accountable, and be a winner. So Terry Morin, from this old guy, thanks for staying. I hope you stay a long, long time, because what you've built is an exciting, winning basketball program, and it's a heck of a lot better than going to Tennessee. Okay, now let me introduce my co-host. I only have one. It's Coach Adranya, who's doing a great job with his IU film room, the portal stuff that I have no clue about, nor a whole lot of interest, but he's the expert. He's here to talk you through all of the stuff you want to know tonight about the portal. Ryan and Andy and Jared are off doing their things, but we're in good hands here with Coach Adranya. I should have your song here somewhere. I think this is it.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Coach Adranya. No matter where you're looking, never gonna find a man with a plan to use all that he knows to educate the fan as he breaks down the X's and O's.
Tony breaks it down. Woody draws it up. Tony breaks it down. Woody draws it up. Tony breaks it down. Woody draws it up. Tony breaks it down.
I was spending the afternoon with my new granddaughter, and I had to rush home to be with you, Coach, so it was hard to break away. But we got some news. Woody's got a plan, a portal plan, and you're here to break it down. What are you thinking about Indiana basketball this week, Coach?
Yeah, I apologize. I don't think I'm probably nearly as cute or cuddly as your new granddaughter.
You're close. No,
I'll do my best. I'll do my best. Yeah, it's been a dead period. Throughout the Final Four, you're not able to have recruits on campus for the duration of a week. That ended today, I think, at noon. And a lot of news started trickling out really this afternoon for IU and some portal targets and things like that I'm sure we'll get into. So, super exciting stuff. I think if you like tracking this kind of stuff, I was joking with some folks earlier today. It's like, there's that really diehard set of fans that we hang on every moment of every recruit and the visits and who they follow on Instagram and who they unfollow and, just craziness. And it's like, the majority of the fan base, it's like they show up in November and just start learning guys' names. And, it's two polar opposites. Neither's right or wrong. It's just kind of funny how different fandom is for certain folks. But if you like following this stuff, there's plenty to follow. That's for sure.
And we're here to talk about it. I'm moving towards that other side of the fan where I'm going to wait till November, or I'll at least wait till they sign, because Indiana's doing their job in contacting as many people as they possibly can. They've been not in touch. I don't know that, but they've been watching all throughout the season. They know who might have popped in the portal. This is a huge process right now. Every college team coach is doing this right now. Almost every team that I've looked at has 5 or 6 spots to fill. It's a new era in college basketball where there's some talk, we'll get into it later, about can you still build a program? I still believe you can, but it is going to be a refresh program every year with multiple openings as opposed to 1 or 2 recruits or traditional paths to building a program. And I'm kind of just, my mind is just flying with how many people are here and there and the coaching carousel, which we'll talk about as well. So when they sign and commit, then I'll start diving into them. I'm going to let people like you do all that legwork and make my job a little bit easier along this portal season here, which is about, 2 more weeks or 3 more weeks until it closes, correct?
Yeah, you can enter the portal through May 1st, and then you've got, you can commit whenever you want.
So whenever. Okay.
Yeah, and grad students, they don't have a timeline or a window. They can enter or exit as they wish freely.
Well, we're going to talk about those visits that we're hearing and getting information, and we'll talk a little bit about the fits. We'll get Coach Adranya's thoughts on some of the names that are attached to the Indiana University program. In segment 2, we're going to talk about what we saw in the NCAA tournament, some title game takeaways and some tournament takeaways. We'll also talk about the coaching situation. And I think the coaching situation and the portal is very interesting, and it opens up as the coaches have changed here recently. So have the number of players that are either going to enter the portal or could enter the portal, which is why, in last week's show, the question was, is it time to panic? And I think the guys did a great job in saying, no, it's not really time to panic because the portal is open for another 2 weeks, and all these coaches changes, there's so many players available that I don't envy the coaching staff for whittling this down and finding all of those players. But we'll talk about the coaching takeaway, especially Kentucky and that situation. And as always, we'll end segment 3 with the mailbag. We have some good questions. A lot of them are tied to this portal stuff. All of that is coming up this week here on Assembly Call Radio. But now let's talk about our presenting sponsor.
Home field apparel, wear one for the team.
This edition of Assembly Call Radio, just like all shows on the Back Home Network, is presented by our friends at Home Field Apparel, where they have the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you'll find anywhere. And it's not just IU. Home Field has unique, interesting designs printed on the softest, most comfortable fabrics for over 150 colleges and universities. Currently, some college championship designs for South Carolina and UConn. You can check that out. It's not just colleges. They have some stuff for Little Five. The Indy 500 line is awesome as well. No matter what you buy, it'll be comfortable and the colors will last through many washings. And you're supporting an Indiana-based company that came through the Kelly Business School, so what could be better than that? I know I like the tournament surprise T-shirt package that they have, the mystery box, and until I got the last mystery box, and there was a T-shirt that I promised I would never buy that ended up, I think it's going to be my working painting shirt, Coach Adranya. I have a bone to pick with Connor that he sent me a shirt of some school we will not mention, but I guess you get that in the mystery box. It still be comfortable when I'm out sweating and painting and mowing the lawn. But anyway, go to homefieldapparel.com. Use our promo code HOME23 for 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right, here's some headlines, and we're going to go, again, right to you quickly, Coach, because I do think you're the one to talk about. But we have, and my name pronunciation is horrible. I apologize to the players and to the fans. But Farrell Payne, a big guy from Minnesota, right, is scheduled to visit April 12th, 14th. Connor Hickman from Bloomington. April 14th, Omar Ballo, the big man from Arizona, is the new name. October 14th and 16th has mentioned that he is going to be visit. Amari Williams, coach, I think is also a big guy from Drexel as well. April 19th and 20th. Kanan Carlisle, April 19th to 20th. Miles Rice is from Washington State. Kanan is from Stanford, correct?
Yep.
Am I correct on that? And then Miles Rice from Washington State. His coming, we thought earlier today, we didn't know that. It just came out on the 12th tomorrow, and Leland Walker to be determined. Those are the transfer portal visits that we know are coming up. Where would you like to start, Coach, in talking about the visits? And then, at some point we also got to talk about this. Doesn't mean that we're just going to pick from this, too, because some of these guys will choose to go elsewhere. And some other guys will pop. So there's so much to this portal that we need to know. So get started and let us know where you want to go with this.
Yeah, the first thing about the portal, man, could you imagine the anxiety that coaches have during portal season of just
gotta be nuts,
keeping your guys happy? Like, and the fact that, like, I do like that they have a window that at least closes, because like last year, I don't think Cam Spencer came out till the summer.
Right.
And I believe it was like Georgetown was kind of tampering with him, got him into the portal, and then UConn came and snagged him up, and he went and won a national title. But just the anxiety of that, man, I would not envy that at all. And I know you hear coaches talking about, and this is kind of a side tangent, you hear coaches talking about, like, we got to fix this, and a lot of people are like, oh no, players finally have power and stuff like that. And I don't think a lot of coaches are like, hey, they shouldn't have power here, but the current situation, how it is, just seems like it just, I don't know, it's just kind of ugly and nasty and yeah.
It's the wild, wild west right now.
Yeah.
Because everyone is a free agent every year. When you talk player movement, the NBA is more strict than college basketball right now, with rookie contracts and then a certain time for free agency and tampering issues. You can't talk to people until there's a window open, and none of that applies to college basketball right now. So that's and this is not an Indiana thing. This is just all over the places. You have people, I think, that can transfer multiple times now. There's no restrictions.
Anytime. Zero restrictions at all.
Anytime. So you could use your 4 years of eligibility in 4 different spots. We're seeing that in football. We're seeing that in a lot of sports. And I think ultimately, Jared's talked about this. I think Galen has mentioned this in several podcasts too. It's going to come down to employee contracts at some point, or schools saying, if you're going to come here and get NIL money, then we're going to, whatever that is going to be at some point. I think that might be a piece of fixing what I think is just an unbelievable mess for coaches and for fans and for players as well. I don't think it's a healthy segment of time that we're going through, but it's the one that we're going through. And the interesting thing for me is you can hit a home run every year. I mean, there's no stopping any program from hitting the right pieces and getting the right pieces and then having a magical year. The problem is, can you sustain a winning program? What is that winning formula? And that is much they're open to debate on, do you get young transfers? I'm a big proponent of the Miller Kopp type of transfer. Bring someone in. Can you keep them for more than 1 or 2 years or 3 years and build a little continuity and then splice in that superstar wear for a year? I think that's a conversation for a whole off-season podcast as well. But I think that's something that you're talking about is, how do you one of our questions, I think, later on is, how do you build culture and a winner in this wild, wild west program? And I have no clue. I have some thoughts, but it's all brand new. And that's part of the portal. So the visits are here. Your thoughts on who's visiting, the likely – I don't know that we can even talk about likelihood, but the players we mentioned are coming. That is a good sign. They have interest. We have interest in them. It is not a guarantee. I would urge everyone not getting too excited. I thought last year as a fan base we got very excited with Connect and Ledlum and Timberlake, and sometimes we got visits and sometimes we didn't. Be excited because we're in the ball game with some good players. But let's really get excited when they sign on a dotted line. But your thoughts on this list of players that we mentioned?
Yeah, I'll start with Miles Rice. For folks that follow Trilly Donovan and are in his Discord, he's got a pretty good track record. He posted a commitment gift today for Miles Rice to Indiana, which that typically has a good track record. And as Coach tempers the expectations, I just ramp them right back up in telling you that Trilly's predicting a commitment from Miles Rice, but he is a guy that is somebody that can really help flip your program in a hurry. He really is. So he's got a really, I don't want to say awesome, that's inspiring backstory. Battled cancer his redshirt freshman season at Washington State, beat it, came out last season and put up tremendous numbers for whatever many thought was an overachieving Washington State team. Their coach ended up at Stanford, which ended up with Miles in the portal. But, he's a lengthy point guard, really understands change of pace, change of direction. And, Coach, one thing I think you'll really like about him is he plays off 2 feet a lot. And,
love that.
Yeah, and as a guard, a guy that does that and can get into the lane, play off 2 feet. I think there's like 4 times in a little video I put together for the portal tracker where he drives in with his right hand, gets into the paint, jump stops, and then reverse pivots and puts up a left hand layup as the defender goes flying by. Like that really got me going, and was exciting for me. But a really, really solid point guard. I mean, to me, he was my number one want in the portal, or is, I shouldn't say was, is my number one want. And, it sounds like things are heading in a good direction there. And it's a nice domino to fall. Like, guys want to play with players like that. Like, I think of Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers. Like, people are saying, like, people actually want to come to the Pacers now because they've got a point guard in Tyrese Halliburton that does so well. So, I'm a big Rice fan. And
what
he's visiting.
What was his assist? I'm sorry to interrupt. What was his assist numbers? Is he a scorer and an assist guy?
He is. He's a little bit.
I haven't done the research I probably needed to, but
he's a little bit of both. Yeah, his assist rate was about 23. So pretty solid. Definitely a scoring point guard is what Bart Torvik has him defined as in his system. Plays really well out of the pick and roll. Makes the right reads, kind of does a little get the guy in jail on his back and then reads from there, which is exciting for me. Now, the one thing that I know a lot of IU fans are wondering is like, well, how did he shoot the ball? That's where I have bad news. So he's a 27% three-point shooter. Now, there are some caveats there. As of February 18th, he was 34% from three. He missed his last 22 attempts of the season, which, as I noted, he was about 7 or 8 months from his last chemo treatment. I'm sure there was some fatigue setting in to end the year, and he really struggled to shoot the ball to end the year. So that being said, he was also a freshman. He was in his freshman season. Usually you'll see your biggest jump in your shooting numbers freshman to sophomore year. So there are some caveats there. I know that we played that game a lot last season too, of trying to figure out if this guy could just do this and this, and like, you are what your numbers say you are at the end of the day, and I totally understand that. But he is a guy that's going to be able to create a shot for himself and others, and that is something that IU severely lacked last season for sure.
Well, Coach, that's something that Coach Woodson likes, and regardless of where everyone is with shooting and what we should run and what we shouldn't, that fits what Coach Woodson likes. That's what, when X played well, that's what he did. That's what Trey Galloway, when he started getting 11, 12 assists, he was scoring. Now, he had to score at the rim a little bit, and you would like a little variety there, but that's what Coach Woodson likes and Coach Woodson wants. And if that, the other thing that I like from hearing from that is that if we can keep him here, because it is the wild, wild west, he's got 3 years of eligibility. So if he's a solid point guard, has had 2 years in a program, I know he redshirted and was overcoming the health issues, but he's a junior in age with 3 years of eligibility. If you can get him in here and keep him for a year or two, I don't know NBA, prospects and all of that, but if you can get multiple years out of that young man, and then again, I love the can score and can create for other people. And whenever you tell me the kid can play off 2 feet, then he's well grounded in fundamentals. And that is something that at times I thought our guards just were hell bent at getting to the rim and jumping in the air and making plays, and they were quick and they were good. But again, that 2 feet Villanova type guard is what he sounds like.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun to watch in watching his film, and just some other box score numbers. He averaged 15 a game, 3.1 rebounds, 4 assists per game. He had a box plus minus of 2.8, offensive rating of about 105. For a freshman, those are really, really phenomenal numbers. That when I say his offensive rating is 105. To put that in perspective, Jalen Hood-Schifino's was 94 his freshman year. And so, that can kind of give you some perspective of some things and kind of where he's at in comparison, and why I think the staff was really excited to get him on campus. This is a Coach Ya connection. He comes from Atlanta. Coach Ya actually did some training of him, it looked like, back when he wasn't coaching, in 2019-ish. And so had that connection there, and were able to foster a relationship and get him on campus starting tomorrow.
The other thing, too, I think with guards, sometimes you got to be careful about numbers. We'd love to get a guy in that shot 40%, but you got to look at what the fit is, too. If we have, we got 2 or 3 guys coming back that are pretty good scorers. So, you're gonna set your defense for them. We need to see Rice in an offense where you got to double team some people, or you got to play off of someone, and that may create an increase in his percentage from that 27. And like you said, it was above 30 until the very end. So this sounds like a very intriguing young man. We have 3 bigs on the list: Payne, Ballo, and Williams. What are you thinking? Again, Coach Woodson loves his big. He loves his rim protector. He loves his lob threat. Those guys. Who fits that role, in your opinion, out of those 3? And it's going to be one of those 3, don't you think? Or do any of those fit that role of Sparks and the backup kind of plan that we might need to fill in?
I think all of those guys are looking to start wherever they're going.
Right.
And I think, too, you could argue the merit of it all day if you want one of those guys at the 5. But at the end of the day, it's how Mike Woodson wants to play. And so I think that's an important caveat when we discuss this roster and why we would like. I think Jared articulated it really well on Twitter today, talking about a Ballo visit. It's like, look, it might not be your dream scenario of a roster, but if you're going to play that way, you might as well go get the best center, in the portal.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You're not going to hope that things don't work out, and then all of a sudden you end up with Peyton Sparks as your starting center or something along those lines. So that's an important caveat, I think, to note with that 5 spot. So you mentioned Payne. He'll be on campus tomorrow. He's a Minnesota transfer. I believe he put up 17 and 12 at Assembly Hall against IU. To me, he's my least favorite of the 3. I think he suits the role fine. He's a fine, solid Big Ten college basketball player. He's going to play Power 5 ball and start somewhere. And if it's IU, great. I think IU's got some good options here. Ballo is visiting from Arizona. Ballo, to me, is your best player. He was one of the best centers in college basketball. I don't know if everybody remembers a couple years ago, he and Trace Jackson Davis went head-to-head in Las Vegas, and he kind of got the better of TJD just using his big frame. I think he's 6'11", 7 foot, something like that. And so he's a really intriguing piece. If you follow some of the tea leaves and things like that, it was kind of reported that before Ballo even went in the portal, all of a sudden Khalil Ware started following him on Instagram. So I'm not trying to paint a picture of it's all butterflies and rainbows for IU. I'm trying to paint the picture of this is kind of the new world and new age of things. It's you use your players to help recruit guys and kind of back channel guys and things like that, which is an interesting thing that to get used to. But honestly, one of the best indicators of who IU's targeting is who does Trey Galloway start following on Instagram? That has truly been one of my ways I've found of Oh yeah, like and then like 2 days later, yeah. Well, usually I'll let other people find it, and I'll just see it like on the Discord. Like, oh, okay, like I guess I'll take a look. It doesn't really intrigue me, but
let me ask you a quick question. What is a guy like Balo? Why does he leave Arizona to come to IU? Is it that pro potential that he sees TJD and Ware? And because Arizona's won, they were a top 5 team all year with the chance. I think to be that 1 seed, they weren't, but a couple years of good winning. Is that the lure for Balo to make the? I think there's another where maybe the NIL money. I don't know what Arizona NIL money is, or was he pushed out of Arizona? Did he just want to go a different direction? Why is Balo coming from Arizona to Indiana at this point in his career?
Yeah, it's interesting. Especially when you look at Balo played his freshman season at Gonzaga. Tommy Lloyd left Gonzaga, went to Arizona. He kind of followed him there. So maybe it's a situation where he's kind of been under Tommy Lloyd his entire career. Yeah, and just like I want something different. From all indications, Tommy Lloyd is he's tough. I think players like him, but it's going to be a different style than maybe a Mike Woodson or something. Who's kind of has that players coach moniker, and it's more of subdued nature of like how he goes about his coaching and things like that is intriguing to a lot of guys that guys like. Mike Woodson certainly has the label of players coach, and so I think that could certainly play into it. I think money certainly helps. All of these guys have agents now, which I think some people forget. Like, you've got an agent in your ear basically figuring out what your market is before you ever even enter the portal. For a guy like Balo, every basically Power 5 team in the country is going to try to go after him. They're going to bid each other up, and like you're going to end up with a healthy sum of money no matter what. Even if you go like back to Arizona, I don't think it's in cards, but like even if you just go to the portal and you go back to the team you're at and you propped up your NIL by $200K, like you'll probably see situations like that this offseason. So it's a really, kind of goes back to what we talked about. It's weird that a guy that's seen a lot of success, the offense was certainly, I guess I don't want to say centered around him, but he was a high usage guy at Arizona, so it's not like he wasn't getting the touches. But like you said too, Mike Woodson is a guy that now 2 straight years he's taken a guy and propelled them to the NBA draft that is in that exact position. That would be the easiest recruiting pitch I think for Indiana to sell right now, is on a big man that is kind of a star.
It kind of makes sense with the rules. You're loyal to a school. Dickinson did that to Michigan. No, the offense ran through him. He got a better NIL deal to go play at Kansas. The rules are such where if you have value and you have an agent working for your value, go find that value, and that's where Indiana sits pretty right now. Not only did they have good NIL, but then a lot of people have stepped up in the last 2 or 3 months to make sure that we have outstanding NIL, is what we're hearing through. I have no numbers. I don't know the budget. I know there's some questions. What's the salary cap and all that stuff. I just know that people are very, very interested right now in providing resources for NIL to make sure Coach Woodson has the ability to get players that he really wants, and that's a benefit right now. There's no other way to look at that than a benefit. I will talk about this a little bit later. I think that helps acquire talent. We have yet to see direct NIL with national championships or Big Ten championships. There's a whole discussion on, does money buy you winning or does it buy you talent? And it can buy you talent that is winning, but that's UConn did it. This is more of a second segment conversation. But you got to find those kids who want to come get paid and also want to just punch you in the face to win in order to win in this wild, wild west. So we have the bigs, and we have a variety of different guards on that list, right? Carlisle is a bigger wing, right? And Hickman is the shooter from Bloomington South. That I forget Missouri Valley.
Bradley.
Where was he at? Bradley. Your thoughts on those two who are on our visit list?
Yeah, Carlisle is the guy that the staff was in on a little bit last year. They thought Stanford staff might get fired, and they really had their eyes on Carlisle last season. And then he played at Stanford, and it's really hard to say. Like his numbers weren't eye popping at Stanford. I think he went, I guess, 11.5 points per game as a freshman was pretty good, but his box plus minus was minus 1.8, so really struggled to guard, wasn't super efficient in how he played. His offensive rating was 91.7. His assist rate was low and his turnover percentage. So, like, he's certainly a guy that has some flaws, but then when you watch his film, you can see why there are a ton of high major programs in on him because he certainly has the skill set. He's smooth. Again, he's another one of those guys that understands change of speed, change of pace. And so he's intriguing, certainly. He's also another Atlanta kid. Miles Rice posted a picture of he and Carlisle the other day on social media, which kind of led some folks down a rabbit hole of, like, what does this mean? Especially with IU targeting both. So he's an intriguing prospect. He's not as exciting to me. Like, let's say you do get Miles Rice and you're still going after another kind of combo guard. My number one on that list is Conwell from Indiana State, certainly. But if it's between Carlisle and Hickman, that's tough because Carlisle, you've got 3 years of eligibility. Another one of those situations where if you're trying to build a program, if you've got a backcourt together for 3 years, like that, those are the types of things that still help you start stacking years together of success. But on the flip side, Connor Hickman is another one of those guys that checks a box that Indiana couldn't check last year, and that's just being able to flat out shoot the crap out of the ball. He's been defined as a shooter as long as I can remember, and I played or I coached against him playing at Bloomington South all 4 years while he was in high school, and he had an offensive rating of 113.5 this past season at Bradley. Shot 40% from three on 182 attempts, so high volume guy. Now when I watched how he played for Bradley, it was a little bit different in how he got his shots than what Indiana is typically doing. They were running him off screens and things like that, putting him in like Spain pick and rolls, which is basically him setting a back screen for the big and then popping and essentially ends up open because they don't want to give up a lob to the big. So Indiana would have to do some different things offensively to get him the usage that he had at Bradley. But if they're able to get him those looks, he's definitely a dude that can shoot the crap out of the ball. But I wouldn't picture him as like a Miller Kopp. He can put the ball on the deck as well. Had a good assist rate of about 18. Average 3 assists per game. So, kind of defined as a combo guard, if you will. So he can run a little bit of point for you. You could put somebody like a Miles Rice, at the 2 and let him kind of run the offense and run the show for a bit. So, that's kind of where you're at with Hickman. It'll be intriguing though, because as you noted, like now you've got a lot of nice pieces in the fold. All of these guys that you've got in the fold are going to want to start. So how do you sell that to all of these different, like all of these guys that we mentioned are all visiting within the next week. And so,
yeah.
And they're not dummies. They're going to ask questions about the other guys that just visited and what's, if he comes, then what's my role and vice versa. So there's a ton of moving parts and it's all happening at warp speed, which is, again, another reason why I don't envy college coaches at this point. But if you're an Indiana fan, it's great because you have a lot of intriguing options and a lot of different things you can do with a lot of different pieces as it currently sits.
Yeah, and David Hanley asked a question, how would Ballo fit with Malik? I think a lot like Ware and Malik did last year. I think that's what Coach Woodson was comfortable doing. I think you're going to see more of that if you get one of these back-to-the-basket type guys, rim-running type guys. That is the philosophy of our coach. And why not go get the best guys to do it? We can debate whether that is the right way or the wrong way, and I'm sure that we will. But if you're coaching and you believe in your system, go get the guys and then prove that your system works. And I think Ballo is a good idea. I do worry, you brought up a good question, 2 good points that I want to kind of go back before we end this segment, and that is, you do have to worry. There is how do you put the team together? There's a question later, again, about that culture. You can't Can you promise? Can you not promise? How does it fit? And who's willing to accept a backup role? Is there an amount of money that a certain player is okay with to come in and play off the bench? Those are things when you have this many openings, but you really only have 2 spots. If you look at Galloway coming back, and I know there's some talk about Galloway coming off the bench, but really Galloway started for 2 years for you as a coach. Unless you have that relationship to where, hey, but you got Tucker coming in, who's not even in the portal, not even on this list, who's McDonald's All-American, who's going to go to the G League. So that becomes a huge issue then if you do bring in some of these guys of whether they sign on the dotted line or not, the fit. So, David, I think that's a bigger question about just Ballo and Malik. How do all of these guys fit is interesting. And then the other one, you brought up Conwell from Indiana State, and you mentioned the same thing with Hickman and how he got his shots. I love Conwell. I think he's just a gritty guy. I think he can score off the bounce. He can deck it. He can do a variety of things. He didn't have a great game in that NIT championship game, unfortunately, but I like the young man. But I wonder if some of those guys in the Missouri Valley are those system guys that are run off screens, and then are they going to be happy where they are getting just kick-out threes, spot-up threes? Are they going to get enough of them for what they want to do in their time? Can they accept that role? That is a big piece of this, more so than just 42% shooter. We saw Conwell lead Indiana State all the way, to the NIT, be a part of leading Indiana State there. They're good players. Can they fit in? You saw Domask, you saw Jones come from that conference and fit in, but those teams had really good players to where they could elevate their game off of the good players. Indiana has that as well, but you really got to sell that, I think. So those are a couple things. Coach Marlowe also said, do you want another season of playing with 2 post players on the block? How do the pieces fit is the next big question for Coach Woodson, because last year we had a really good offseason. McDonald's All-American come in. We had Ware. You had some backup guys in Walker and Sparks. There was a lot of I guess we were all excited because we thought the roster construction after TJD left was really good, and it didn't pan out. It blossomed really, really, really late. So I think that's the big thing and why I'm taking a little bit of a step back this year until the team has been decided, and then even going to take a step back from my enthusiasm until we start seeing stuff in November again. Because I said on a couple shows ago, Coach, I think you need talent, but you need coachability, talent that's coachable, and you need talent that wants to just punch you in the face to win. That's how you win consistently in college basketball right now. That's what UConn did, and that'll be our segment 2. And I don't know how you figure that out. I mean, there's no test. And
especially in these short recruitments.
Yes, the short recruitments, some of those things. But I think that's –
to me, though, it's why you have to do so much homework during the season on
correct
who are guys you would want to get in the portal, and you're doing your back channeling and figuring those things out. That's another thing to talk about, too, is like when guys hit the portal, it's usually not a surprise to teams that are going to go after them. And it's why within 24 hours you see visits lined up and stuff like that, because as much as we want to turn a blind eye to it, like those things are happening.
Yes. And people are – there's a big board somewhere out of the vision of anyone visiting Cook Hall or someone or whatever it is at Purdue or wherever else. They already have like quote, if this guy comes – off the board into the portal, this is our kind of guy. This is our kind of guy. Those the fit question is going to be the big question for all of us. There's no doubt in my mind, Coach, that Coach Woodson's going to do a good job. He does a good job on these short recruitments, on these decommits that you might see from Kentucky or Arkansas with all these coaching changes. He does a really good job. The question remains, he had 1 year where there's a really good fit, and we got a 4 seed. In the other years, things didn't quite fit, and the record wasn't what Indiana fans want. And now in year 4, we hope that what he brings in does fit and gel a hell of a lot quicker than 14 and 13 at the back end when they played really nice basketball. Okay, coming
Absolutely.
Up on Assembly Call Radio, we'll discuss a couple of topics that involve some of our rivals. First, we'll take away from Purdue's loss in the national title game. We'll talk about Kentucky losing Coach Kell and striking out with a few top candidates. So stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. A lot of good things happening. Basketball just ended, which is always a little sad. But we move on. Tony, that was great. Appreciate that, and I appreciate what you do with the film room and all the portal tracker. For those people who are really into it, Tony's the guy. Coach Tonsoni, not the guy. You want to drink a beer? Coach Tonsoni's the guy. You want to talk portal?
I can do that too.
Yeah, you can do both with Coach Adrania.
UK's got a coach. How about that? Mark Pope.
Oh, did they decide on Pope?
Yep.
I think that's an interesting. I know it's not going to be. We'll talk about that here coming up officially on the podcast. I think that's pretty good. I love what he does offensively. That dude shoots threes, and I think all the Kentucky people who didn't like the high-low stuff that Cal ran for a long, long time are going to be refreshed with the style. The question will be recruiting with a guy like that. It's the same issue we kind of had with Archie and some other things too. You get guys who won at other places. When they get to the big stage, can they win? And it's not that easy. But let's talk officially about that here coming up on our second segment. All right, let's go. Here we go.
Hey, this is Max Bielfeldt, Big Ten champ and Better Than Advertised Sixth Man of the Year in 2016. And speaking of Better Than Advertised, join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I'm Brian Tonsoni. I'm here with Coach Adrania. We just got done talking all of the IU portal visits. It's why you're all here. Stick with us, though. We got some good conversation still left to go here on the show. We have a lot of good shows on the Back Home Network. X's and Joe's, doing the work. Still continues in the off season. We had a good question about the women's portal. Kathy and Jeff are the experts there. Get a hold of them either through Substack or whatever. A lot of good stuff going on here.
Right up Meridian.
Back Home Network
With Scott Caulfield and myself doing a little Pacers
There you go
action.
on the Pacers and heading to the playoffs. And of course, we got Coach, your IU film room as well. Am I forgetting any of our shows?
No, I would highly encourage listen to X's and Joe's.
Yes, fantastic.
In this portal season stuff, because they talk a lot about the recruiting and how to build a roster, and Mike and Bob are just terrific, and it's like right in the heart of this season is a great time to even like go catch up on their first episodes, and it'll get you up to speed on some of the data behind building a roster, which is always great.
So, Coach, let's jump into what just popped, I guess, on social media. You saw that, right, and can confirm that Mark Pope from BYU is
Pete Thamel tweeted it. So if he's wrong, then blame Pete.
So the X or the Twitter machine is reporting that Kentucky has their new coach. That was going to be our second part of this segment. We're going to jump right to it. Coach Kell left Kentucky to go to Arkansas, and then Kentucky was looking at Scott Drew primarily. Was looking Billy Donovan and Coach Hurley from UConn. And so in some ways they might have missed on their top targets. Is this a settle to get Mark Pope? Mark Pope played for Kentucky, correct?
Yep, he's an alum.
So he's an alum. He's been at several places. He was at BYU. And what school? Man, I just saw it too, out west, where he got his start before he went to BYU.
So
small school out Utah Valley. Utah Valley, I believe. But has done a nice job with BYU. And really, when they transitioned this year to the Big 12, was really competitive and won some key games for BYU, made the tournament and got beat, got upset in the first round. Has not had, Coach, a lot of tournament success at BYU, but in the conference with Gonzaga and St. Mary's, and then moving to the Big 12, has had a competitive BYU, and now he moves to the hot seat where Kentucky has been with Coach Cal. Your initial thoughts on Cal leaving, and then Mark Pope getting the job, and is it down? Is it tough for these schools now, the Blue Bloods, to get these good coaches to come in, or is it a different world? Any thoughts there on the Kentucky job?
Sure. It seemed kind of odd. Seemed like it kind of came out of the blue with Cal leaving Kentucky for Arkansas. It makes sense from a Cal perspective when you think about, it seemed like he was really going to be on the hot seat coming into this year. Seemed like he'd really kind of worn out his welcome. It seemed like the fan base was kind of split when they heard he was leaving for Arkansas. A lot were very happy that he was leaving, and so that part of it seemed a little odd. Again, going back to Trilly Donovan, he had a unique story basically that kind of said they were basically going to try to float out there that Cal was going to go to Arkansas, and then Cal would come out and basically say, like, I'll stay here if you guys get a new AD, and was going to try to get his friend in as the AD at Kentucky to keep Cal safe. And then the current AD was just like, once that all got floated, I guess Cal doesn't have an agent, and he has in his contract that he is not able to negotiate deals. And so they were going to, basically the AD said, like, you're either going to go to Arkansas or I'm going to fire you for cause of breach of contract. And so he kind of forced his own hand into Arkansas. Again, that all came from Trilly. That's not like data I sourced or anything like that. But anyway, leaving the Kentucky job open was certainly, a lot of folks thought like this is going to be the top names in the country are going to be in contention for this job. As you mentioned, Hurley coming in right off of his national championship, Scott Drew, your Billy Donovans, and guys like that. And, it kind of reminded me of the IU search after Archie Miller. It was like Brad Stevens. It seemed like IU at least got negotiations with Stevens, and then that was turned down. And then a couple of days later, kind of the alum comes home to coach the squad in Mike Woodson. Obviously, Mike Woodson and Mark Pope are different in like their backgrounds and stuff, but Mark Pope is an alum of Kentucky. I personally think that the Kentucky fans are going to grow to love him. I think he's a really, really good coach. Plays a fun style of offense. And the one question with these guys, as you noted, like with an Archie Miller, is like, can you get the big dogs to come play for the big dog school? They have a heck of an advantage these days with NIL. Like, that is, like, you already have skin in the game immediately, and it sounds like Kentucky was a top 2 or 3 program in terms of NIL this season. And so the folks are going to back you. You've got a ton of money to play with. Like, you're going to be able to get guys more times than not. And so Kentucky's never had a problem with that, though. And so I think this would be a change of pace, as you noted, with Pope for them in terms of just his style of play. It's going to be different than Cal's. And, I guess it'll be a little bit closer to like what Kentucky did this season when they had a really good offensive team. They opened the floor up a little bit more and shot more from the outside. So we'll see. Obviously, there's no guarantees. But to me, it kind of spells out too, like, all right, let's say Indiana does make a coaching change at some point in the next couple of years, whether that be firing, retiring, whatever the case may be. When this job does open back up, inevitably, like Mike Woodson's not getting younger. This Kentucky job is one of the top jobs in the country, or at least that's how it's marketed. Indiana's kind of in that same vein. It's like, okay, well, if Indiana opens up, there's not a lot of top dogs that are looking to move more times than not. Like, they're in good situations. Like, Scott Drew in Waco, Texas, he basically said, like, I'm able to talk openly about my faith out here, and that's huge to him. Dan Hurley just won 2 straight national titles. He's an East Coast guy. He doesn't want to leave the East Coast unless maybe it's for the NBA. And so it is an interesting thing where it's like, if guys have things rolling right now, even if you're quote unquote a better job, that doesn't necessarily mean those guys are going to come running for it. So it's just kind of eye-opening and interesting to see that in a big program like Kentucky.
I think you're onto something there. Do you want to go and rebuild everything where the pressure is so great, where you've already built something and it's cooking where you're at, and you've won 2 championships for Hurley? Drew's turned that around, and his beloved got a new stadium arena down there in Waco. And this is, again, the wild, wild west in coaching. You've seen some excellent coaches leave. Jay Wright still should be coaching. I think he didn't want to deal with all of this craziness, right? So, if you have it rolling and you have a handle somewhat on this craziness where you're at, and you have decent money, unless the money is just so great that you have to take that chance. Some of these schools that have blue blood connections or things just aren't as marketable, I'm afraid, as they were at one point. I know we like to believe that Indiana is a blue blood and it's a good job, but we all add to the craziness with the Indiana program too. But my son always reminds me too, every fan base is psychotic about that, right? So, we got to be careful to always say that Indiana's the only one that's toxic or Kentucky's the only one that is toxic. Every fan base has its pressures, but it is going to be interesting that as these new programs pop up. You saw North Carolina go inside. You saw Duke go inside with people that were somewhat close. Indiana has done that with Mike Woodson. Are these jobs in this era right now as marketable?
I mean, look at Louisville. Shirts turned down Louisville to go to St. Louis. I mean, how many guys turned down Louisville?
Well, I think that's so smart for Shirts, because
absolutely.
How many times have you seen guys that have been at mid-majors and gone and not been successful at their big leap? You had Archie here at Indiana a while back. Who was the guy from Butler that went to Iowa? He ended up at Evansville.
Licklider.
Yeah. Licklider was a great coach. You also have those coaches that go bounce and do have success and then go to the next one and end up, Hurley is an example of where he went from Wagner to Rhode Island and then, at UConn. So it's all about hitting the right guy at the right time. It's kind of like the NCAA tournament. You got to have the right matchups, and leading into our next segment, what's our takeaways from the tournament? Purdue was an outstanding basketball team, ran into the greatest team of the year, of 2 years, of maybe of the last 10 years. And you're not going to beat that team when they're playing defense and offense the way they're doing. Well, you've got to hire the right coach. I think Mark Pope will be okay. I think he's got enough experience in the college game and a unique style that I think young kids will like to play. I saw this today. I think it might have been in a feed of Ant Wright, something along that line, where kids don't go to play where there were banners anymore or there was tradition anymore. They're going for NIL, coaches, to get along with the coaching staff. So my question to you is, all these coaches changes, what happens to these kids in the portal? What happens to everyone else who needs players? Like, we have a nice list, and there's, Boogie Fland. Is he going to stay? And he was really close to Woodson and IU, and it had to be a tough decision. Does that pop back in possibilities for Indiana or anyone else? Indiana State has 10 of their 13 scholarships in the portal, as Shirts has gone to Louisville. And Coach Graves, I don't know if he's going to try to maintain any of those guys, but he's going to have to bring people in.
Did you see Cal's press conference last night?
Yeah, I talked to my team.
I met with the team, but there is no team.
There is no team. Well, and even Woodson had that issue when he got here. He didn't know who was going to be on his team. He had to talk everyone into coming back. So, what's the order of where kids go now? You're closer to that. Have been coaching a lot more recently and connected with some AAU stuff too. They're definitely not going for majors or whatever. Maybe a college town or atmosphere, yes, but not the schooling anymore. What's the hierarchy of these kids as coaches move and transfers and NIL? What's that hierarchy of importance for kids in general? I know there's individual differences, but
Yeah, I think 1A and 1B. I mean, it kind of depends. Like if you're a top dog, NIL is really going to be at the forefront because there's going to be people that are offering you asinine amounts of money. So let's call that like your 5 stars. But like your 3-star, your 4-star, I think the biggest thing is the relationship that's built and the comfortability of going to play for that person or those people. And when I say that person, I don't necessarily even mean the head coach. A lot of guys are going places because of the assistant coach that really builds that tough relationship with them. And, that's where Khalil Ware got kind of screwed at Oregon. He went to Oregon for an assistant coach leaves. Now he's stranded out in Oregon playing for a guy he doesn't really even like. So I think relationship pieces are a huge part of it. It's why you see Maryland is hiring Derek Queen's AAU coach to kind of get him in the fold. Like, there's a lot of instances of things like that happening where guys get put on staff just so they have some comfortability with a top player. So I think that's a big part of it. I think there is still that aspect of some guys that if they get offered by like their dream school, you've got like your Anthony Leals and things like that where, he just wanted to play for Indiana since he was a little kid, and the second Indiana offered, like he knew that's where he was going to go and he's going to stay there no matter the circumstances. So I do think there is still a piece of that at play too. I think what used to be a big part that is kind of in the last few years isn't as important is like facilities and stuff like that. Like that used to be a huge thing. Like 15 years ago, it was all about how do we upgrade facilities? How do we just wow kids when they step on campus of what we have to offer in terms of facilities? It's still important. It's still a piece, but I don't think it's nearly as important as it once was.
How does that play then in your mind in the transfer portal too? Obviously NIL is a piece of it. If you're not getting NIL at your school, do you think also that relationships, like if you build relationships in recruiting, but a kid goes somewhere else and now they want to transfer, it's important to not just get kids to sign your letters of intent, but to really build good relationships with AAU coaches and parents and everything. And okay, you're in the top 4 for a kid, but he goes elsewhere. You've built that relationship. So it's really important to constantly work those because the portal now is so important where you might see, you mentioned with 2 Indiana guys that are visiting, Carlisle and, oh my gosh, the Rice. Yep. Are connected to our assistant coach by some of the work that he did in recruiting and in summer workouts. So that's that relationship piece. You think that is correct, that works a lot in the portal as well?
Absolutely. And it's why, I don't want to say the only reason, but you've got a Kenya Hunter on staff because he's got great East Coast connections and is connected to the DMV area, which is a hotbed of talent. Ya is in Atlanta, a hotbed of talent. Coach Walsh knows the Midwest, Chicago, Indianapolis, hotbed of talent. Like those connections that you make with those programs. And now another piece of it is with agents and agencies. Right. Is another piece of it that they have to make those connections. And it's why, you hear a lot of people talk about Adam Howard, who, on the surface was just a grad assistant last year, but, really did so much more for the program because he already has made numerous amounts of relationships across the country to where if you think you want a guy, you can pick up the phone and call somebody that knows them and that's been around them. And that's not only to say, hey, I want to recruit them. It's to figure out, do I want to recruit them? Hey, what's this kid like? What's his parents like? Those various things as well that all go into if a player fits your program that we talked about previously. So it's really interesting. And there's so many moving parts. Again, why I don't envy any college coach as it currently stands.
I think some of the school lore, the blue bloods playing for a blue blood is some of your mid-major or your lower level players that really shine and want to go play in the Big Ten, want to go play in the ACC, want to go play in the Big 12, would love to play at Indiana to just prove that they can play. I think that's probably a piece in that portal too. So how many of these kids leave Kentucky and go to Arkansas? How many of these kids go to St. Louis from Indiana State? Are we going to see big numbers, or what do you believe happens with all these coaches changes that are happening. Musselman going to USC, which started the domino of this whole. How many kids do we think just absolutely follow that coach?
I think we'll see big chunks with both St. Louis and Arkansas, especially Arkansas. I don't think most guys were going to Kentucky based on them being Kentucky. Coach Calipari has a great track record of putting players in the NBA. He's even noted that was more important to him than winning championships, which certainly rubbed people the wrong way, in Kentucky. And so if you're a player, that's what you're committing to. Now, they may open things up because now what you're going to see is, it's a supply and demand market. Supply is low. Demand is super high for high-level players. So some other programs might try to jump in and throw some crazy offers out at some of these kids, and that could change the game a little bit. But I think we'll see a lot follow Cal. And then with Shirts, excuse me, I think they would want to follow them, but they were so good that they might get some bigger, better offers than SLU, where, just truth be told, like a guy like Conwell is, I don't know that SLU's going to be able to have the NIL funds that other teams are going to offer him to match. And so then it becomes, what's more important there, or several factors that are going to weigh into it. I don't necessarily want to say what's more important, but for some of these guys that's life-changing money, and they may not be NBA players where that's going to be accessible for a long period of their careers.
Can Kareem Abdul-Jabbar play in the Big Ten?
I think he could. I love the kid, man. I think
he's awesome, isn't he?
Yeah, I think that he's got a skill set that's unique, but I think you see it with like a Jokic. He's not like a crazy athlete or anything, and he's the best player in the world. If a guy can play, I have a long set. Like if a guy can play, he can play. Like, I get that athleticism is a big part of playing high major ball. I totally do, but there are just some guys that play and win. Like, give me that. I think they just find a way. And so I don't necessarily know that the whole team could play high major ball. I think he would have deficiencies, certainly on the defensive end of guarding either bigger fives or stretch fours and stuff. But offensively, I mean, he was the cog that just, kept the wheel turning for Indiana State. They played through him so much. His vision is great. He can shoot the rock. He can put the ball on the deck. He's a tough matchup for fives or smaller fours to guard. Like, I think he could play high major ball.
You said something there, and I'll finish with what I'm hearing about Robbie. But just give me guys that win. I just think that's the secret in this wild, wild west right now. And that's that psychology. I tell young coaches, take all the psychology you can get. It'll help your program understanding players, how to motivate players, and do all that stuff. But can you get that top-end Division I talent, like Cam Spencer, who wants to just go out and win, right? Tristan Newton, who is a transfer as well. Those guys took Coach Hurley's tough coaching and just wanted to win. And that's why UConn won back-to-back. And before we move to the tournament talk, my son and we're connected to Indiana State a little bit, and we hear rumors and all that there's some rumors that Illinois is poking around Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to put him, because he's from Springfield, Illinois originally, or not Springfield, but up near Chicago. I don't know how true that is or not. As we all know in this portal world, everyone, contact here and contact there. But it'll be interesting to see if he goes to SLU or if he is entertaining any kind of other offers.
And we talked about the Missouri Valley had some big dogs that came up to the Big Ten this year and performed. So, and Illinois was one of them. So, Underwood
Elite
poking
Eight,
around
no
there.
mask.
Yeah.
Championship game in Jones, right? So let's talk about the
Which
NCAA
both of them went to Southern Illinois, so I've got questions about Southern Illinois last season.
Yeah, exactly, right? We have some interesting Final Four games. We also had an interesting run in the NIT. Very, very interesting to see what Coach Hurley has done. We know Coach Painter is our rival, and a lot of us were happy to see that they didn't win. What did those two teams do to be the top two teams to eventually meet in the championship? What is their secret sauce, or at least that you can interpret, to why they were so good this year? And is that a sustainable plan for programs to try to copy?
Yeah, it was. I think they kind of had a couple different plans. Like I think Purdue has long been kind of building up for this year, and they kind of do that every 3 to 4 years. Like they'll have a class where they've got a couple nice young underclassmen, a couple really good upperclassmen, and they're built to make a run. And you could argue that's been the last few years where they've gotten upset. But they that's kind of been Painter's MO. Is every few years he's got a team that you're like, man, this team can make some noise. Back in 2019, they were one shot away from beating Virginia, going to the Final Four. But with both of them, I know it sounds completely simplistic, but they both play very, very good basketball on both ends of the floor. They're not one-dimensional. UConn was the number one ranked offense and adjusted offensive efficiency. Purdue was number 4. UConn was number 4 in adjusted defensive efficiency. Purdue was number 12. And I know that simplifies the game so much. It's like, of course, the best teams are good, but when you can be elite on both ends of the floor, you have to be to get to that level, because you're going to have nights where your shot doesn't fall or a team game plans really well for you, but can you go lock down on the other end? I think it's a testament to UConn. UConn shot 30% from 3 in the tournament and beat every team by 15-plus points because they could lock down and they ran good offense otherwise as well and got good looks on the interior. So, it's not they didn't set the world on fire from outside, and they just got hot to go on a run. Like they lock in, they have systems that they're true to, and they're not going to stray from them. Purdue, maybe to a fault in the national championship game, they were going to play through Zach Edey in the post. That got them there, and they were going to continue to do that. UConn had a tremendous game plan that was like, let Edey get his 37, but we are going to absolutely lock these dudes down on the perimeter, and they're not even going to get a three-pointer off. And it worked. That no other team's been able to really do that against Purdue. And Purdue's had the kitchen sink thrown at them this year. They've seen it all, and nobody's been able to execute. I know I basically just named off a million different things on why I think they're good, but when it really comes down to simplistic terms, they can do things on both ends of the floor. They're both extremely well coached. Those are two of the best coaches in the country and very well respected coaches as well. And two totally different styles. Matt Painter is very much more relaxed in how he coaches on the sideline, and then you've got Danny Hurley that's like, whoa, dude, relax. He quite literally put his hands on one of his players in the middle of the game. I don't know that I've ever seen that actually called. Like I didn't even know that was a violation because I've never seen it done. But yeah, those are some of the higher level things that how both those programs got to where they're at.
As always, you bring up a couple things. My mind's racing with where to go off of your comments. So I just appreciate talking to you so much. One, the defense was outstanding, and their rotations. The thing that I loved was they were taking care of the 3-point line, but when they did double, their rotations were so quick that Purdue couldn't do anything. Purdue has a lot of sets to get post feeds and threes all year. They take 20 to 25 threes. Only were able to get off 7. That's a great defensive plan. Coach Hurley, I know a lot of people saw that and don't like Coach Hurley, and I understand he's crazy on the bench. The thing that I appreciate about Coach Hurley, he owns it. He doesn't shy away from it. He talks about it. He knows that he needs to be better in some situations. And I think as a coach, you have to be who you are and be real in order to be successful. And so what he's done works. 2 national championships, one from the 4 seed, one from the number 1 overall seed, is just absolutely impressive. And to really dismantle the team that was, second in offensive efficiency. I think UConn was first in offensive efficiency. And then the thing I want to come back to and ask you about is they lost 4 or 5 key members of their championship team and brought in portal players. and won. But they had some guys that they recruited too, and he's been there for 6 years and has improved 6 years in building the system. But he also made an offensive change 2 years ago. And Luke Murray, the assistant at UConn, studies European basketball. They don't watch a league. There's not a league in Europe that they don't, or overseas that they don't watch to find new ways of attacking. And I was mesmerized in all of the games in the Big East tournament that I watched from UConn and all 6 games at UConn of how they moved people, which made defenses just melt. As you said, maybe didn't shoot as well, but they were so hard to guard. But they did it with some transfer portal. And then you see Purdue, who is more traditional with recruits and building and keeping people for 2 or 3 years and sprinkling in a recruit like Lance Jones. From a roster construction standpoint, those 2 teams, is that sustainable? And how does that relate to Indiana or any other team that has 5, 6, 7 portal spots or roster spots open? What can they learn from those 2 squads that played for the national championship?
Yeah, I mean, with Purdue, it's a little harder to gauge because, Zach Edey is the most dominant college basketball player we've seen in a long time. I can't pinpoint on the last time I can remember somebody being so dominant over such a long period of time. And when's the last time 2 Wooden Award back-to-back? When was the last time that happened?
I couldn't tell you.
I couldn't tell you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, that one's a little tougher because he does create a lot of gravity and open things up for other guys. What I always come back to that, and I don't want this to be like a pretty lush fest for me, but, that team had, like, Braden Smith had Zach Edey on his team last year, and he had Zach Edey on his team this year. He was a lot better. Like, Braden Smith is a high level guard, and I know he gets a lot of crap of like, well, he just benefits off of Edey, which, yeah, Edey's going to create. I mean, that's basketball. Like, guys create advantages for you, but he was a completely different player this season, and his numbers showcase that, playing with a dominant player in Edey both years. So that's just a little caveat of I think Braden Smith is somehow underrated, even though he was a first team All Big Ten. He gets a lot of flack, especially from a lot of IU folks, I feel like, because he does play alongside Edey. But with
I'm going to interrupt you real quick before on him. What did you say early? Just give me a guy who wants to win. Like that guy wants to win, whether he's 6 foot, 5'7", 6'3", whatever he is. The dude gets 6.5 rebounds at 6 foot. We talked about guard rebounding all year for Indiana and the lack of guard rebounding at that time. He averaged over 6.5 points. Does he have his deficiencies? Yes. But that dude is a kid who just wants to win and overachieves for maybe his physical attributes, right? I think
Absolutely.
That's something you said earlier, and that's a pinpoint reason that kid is a winner. So sorry I interrupted, but I'm just a big Braden Smith fan because he is that kind of competitor.
Absolutely. And I think what UConn shows you is that you have to recruit like what you think fits. Because, you look at Cam Spencer, obviously a good player, started his career at Loyola, Maryland. And side note, was a All-American lacrosse player. Which kind of makes sense now, like how he just plays with an edge and hard nose.
Those dudes are tough, aren't they?
Yeah, so I got sucked down a rabbit hole. His brother was like the Wooden Award winner for lacrosse players, was a 4-year player, and then was going to be the number 1 pick in the lacrosse draft, and decided he was going to play his grad year in college basketball. Is now playing in the G League. So just a fun fact on the Spencer family. They're like lacrosse aficionados that also double as really damn good basketball players. But when you look at that, he started at Loyola, Maryland. You've got Tristan Newton, who's back-to-back, national, what's the award for, like, most outstanding player of the Final Four, came from East Carolina. And then they have mixed in guys that are top players, like a Castle, Caravan, guys like that. But it's not like Hurley has just gone out and been like, give me the number one player in the portal every single year or whatever the case may be. Like, he's getting guys that he thinks are going to fit what he wants to do. And I think that's an important piece of the puzzle for sure.
Caravan was a high school recruit of his, right? Klingon was a high school recruit of his. So there's 2 high school recruits. And then you sprinkle in Castle, high school recruit. So 3 of their top guys were high school recruits sprinkled in, right? Most of Purdue's guys are recruits with a couple guys that they've sprinkled in each year, Jenkins last year and Smith that year. I think that is the combination. Again, that's why I call it the Miller to Kopp type of recruit, the Rice. If he comes in and you can keep him for 2 or 3 years, build a little continuity, have a couple of those guys. But you're so right on recruiting fit. And if you're listening tonight, write these words down from Coach Adranya. They're how you win in life. They're how you win. You've got to have talent, right? But it's got to be the right fit. It just can't be 8 pieces of talent that don't fit. And then you got to have a killer instinct. You got to have this ability to want to win and drive. That is somewhat not – it isn't measurable by numbers, I don't think. I think the numbers reflect that eventually, but that's what UConn and Purdue both did. Their efficiency numbers were there, offense and defensive. They were number 1 seeds. They were ranked in the top 3 all year long. They played for the national championship. So the takeaways from the national title game is that there's – in this wild, wild west, it's kind of best to have a little bit of combination of good recruiting – of guys and player development and some portal guys and some stud athletes. But again, besides the statistics, as you're looking at his transfer tracker, portal tracker and all of that, the stats are fine. But it's the other things that we really don't know until we see them start playing and gel together or not gel together that we'll know. But that's really what Coach Woodson and every other coach in America needs to try to figure out is what is the best fit. Tony, I think that's some excellent things that you shared here with us. And coming up on the assembly call, we're going to talk about your questions. So we'll dip into the mailbag, answer those questions. So stick with us here on the assembly call. Good stuff, Coach. Just outstanding stuff. Appreciate you so much.
Absolutely. I'm having a blast.
Good stuff. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 questions or so. Let's get to them, and then we'll call it a night.
Did Jared say he was hopping on at some point?
I thought he said he was. I can't find a mediocre question from there it is. All right. So, you ready?
Ready when you are.
Fire away. Here we go.
This is Jordan Halls, and I never miss a shot or an episode of the Assembly Call.
Welcome back to Assembly Call Radio. I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni. I'm here with Coach Adranya. We've been talking portal. We've been talking coaches changes, the NCAA tournament. Now we're going to answer your question, as it's now time for our mailbag. Most of these questions were submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community on Substack, which you can learn more about at assemblycall.com. And believe it or not, we have...
It's not that good, but it's not that bad. It's Jay's mediocre question.
So here we go. Jay's mediocre questions. Good to have that back. If next season IU had a similar season to what NC State had this year, not going to make the tournament, but make a run in the conference tournament, very deep run in March, would you change your opinion on the future of the program under Woodson? How do you think the fan base as a whole would react to a season like that? Tony, fire away first.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it. I just, it would be a lot. It would be hard to withstand the up and down nature of that throughout the season, and you basically until the second week in March think you're out of the tournament. Don't get me wrong, it'd be a blast to do it. If we can make a Final Four, I'll take it any way I can get it, but I prefer that not be the way. Would it change my opinion on the future of the program? It's hard to say. I can't even put myself in that situation. I really can't. It's so hard for me. It's a really bad answer by me, but it's just I don't know.
Yeah, here's one. I think you'd be excited. One, it's a Big Ten championship. You make a deep run, especially if you get to the Final Four. You'd have to be excited. Heck, there was some excitement at the end of this year, winning 4 in a row, winning the first game in the Big Ten tournament. A lot of people wanting to believe that Indiana was going to get selected as an at-large. I had to kind of share some sad news there. I think you would have to be excited because you root for Indiana, and you would be happy for the coach to have that success, and you would be happy for the players to have that success. I don't know that would change the overall perception of modern basketball and other things that people have. I think the fan base would enjoy that run. It did buy Kevin Keats some time. It probably would buy Coach Woodson some time, to be honest with you. I'm of the belief that Coach Woodson has at least 2 years left at Indiana, because that'll be going into his renewal year of year 6, and then it's going to be a decision between the powers to be and Coach Woodson if there's going to be an extension, a retirement, or moving in some direction. But I think that decision is likely to be pushed back, not at the end of the 4th year, but the end of the 5th year. And I honestly believe that. And I believe that Indiana is going to accumulate a lot of good talent here this season. I think they're going to have a chance to be in the top half, if not another 5-6 spot in the Big Ten. I think they're going to have a good chance if they get Ballo and Rice and some of these guys that are heavily talented. They weren't too far off this year. I think they make the tournament. So I don't think there's going to be a coaching change in the near future. So, Jay, mediocre question it was. I think you got a couple mediocre answers, to be honest with you. But it's Indiana basketball. Let's root for the name on the front and worry about all that stuff, if it happens. I guess I would take that. The question would be, the better question, Jay, would have been, would you take that, or would you get a TJD year and get a 4 seed, play for a championship in the Big Ten and lose a championship in the Big Ten, and then get run in a round of 32 again by 15 points by the 5th seed or something like that? What would you think? That might have been even a better question. So, Jay, work on that
next week
a little bit. Next week, we need a little better question. James Byer says, portal salary cap question. I did say portal for those of you who are mishearing what I'm saying. I'm a grandpa now. I can't say that other word that Bryce is typing in there. Nor should I or would I. We don't know exactly what guys are getting paid, but James is trying to get a handle on basic math. A couple of weeks ago, we mentioned AJ Storr wanting $1 million. And I think, remember correctly, Ryan thought that was ridiculous. Jared shrugged and basically said that's the going rate for a point guard. Cal takes Arkansas job. Goodman says they have an NIL war chest with the Tyson family. Will give him $5 million, which would be the highest of college basketball. Have you heard rumors talk about salary levels of program levels? What's out there? James would like to know, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Goodman said, that's your higher end of what you're going to get from like a portal salary cap. I don't really think there's a cap, though. That's the thing. Is like,
that's the thing.
If you go to your collective and like, look, we got an opportunity to go get X, Y, and Z, and we're going to need this amount of money. More times than not, at least at Indiana, you're probably going to be able to get that money. So the cap is the funny part. It's a soft cap, certainly. At least at some places, but it's really hard, and I think that's what a lot of coaches want change too, is that there is actually like a salary pool that you pull from and employment contracts and all these things that we chatted about earlier, because there's just no visibility into it, and that's on either side. Like a lot of people give money to collectives, they don't really know where that money's going either. You hope and you pray that it's going to the right things, but it's they're not going to tell you, yeah, your $100 donation went to Trey Trace Jackson Davis to go do X, Y, and Z. So it's like it's a really convoluted system, and it's so silly to me that you hear about is these TV contracts and this big money, and these schools are just raking all this dough, and they're like, however, you the fans and you the donors, you're actually going to buy this team. We're going to go ahead and keep all these billions, and you guys, how about you go fund our team? And then like everybody's just like, yep, that's how it is. That's what we got to do. Fire away. Here's millions. Not everybody. We don't have the millions, certainly here at Assembly Call. But it's crazy, man. I know we've said it multiple times, but it's hard to wrap your mind around.
Yeah, James, I would think Indiana's close to Arkansas, if not surpassing Arkansas. And from what I've heard, unverified, no fact here, but I've heard that there are a lot of people willing to put a lot of money into this year to get the guys that are visiting and then the ones that we don't even know about yet, that there is money. I don't know that there is a cap here at Indiana right now with some of the donors and their support for Coach Woodson, which should be able to get talent in this portal.
Yeah,
Phillip
I'd be surprised.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'd be surprised if there's a scholarship player at IU that is less than 6 figures this season. Like, I guess you could put it that way. Like, I'm not saying I know that for a fact, but I'd be surprised if that was the case.
Oh, I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. In fact, I think for the most part that might even be higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I just think there is a
you might be
concerted
pushing 7
effort to
with
make.
some.
Yeah, I think there's a concerted effort to make sure the roster is what Coach Woodson wants, and money is not going to be a hindrance here at Indiana this offseason.
Absolutely.
The bigger question, Coach, is when does that dry up? You brought up a thing like when are fans, even the casual fans, you had that big fundraiser and people who donate $50 or $20 and they all already buy season tickets and then they give the money to have season tickets. When is that soft money, not the hardcore money? And even for those big time donors, like the reason they got big time money is they just didn't give it away all the time, right? When or does it ever? Do they just have so much that millions and millions and millions of dollars isn't going to scratch the surface for them? That could be true. I don't have that kind of money.
But then what's already starting to happen is those guys that have the endless supply now want to start making decisions in your program. And so then coaches got to make a decision of like, do I even want your money or do I actually want full control over my basketball team, my roster? Like
that's a good point.
There was some report that one guy that was given the money wanted to approve every scholarship player that was coming aboard before he would approve that he would give them that money. And so now they've got your program hostage. It might be a guy that knows nothing about basketball.
Yeah. That's
crazy.
You're not making decisions as a program. It's the person with the
money
checkbook. Yeah, the money. Philip asked, who do you think will be the portal player that IU has been connected with that would have the largest impact on winning games next season? I'm going to add my 2 cents, and then you're the expert on this. Well, from what you said, that point guard from Washington State. Give me guards. I would love shooters, but if you give me creators and 2-foot players and scorers and passers, I think you saw it last year, Coach. Love X, don't love X, whatever. But when X wasn't playing well, or X was injured, Indiana wasn't as good. When X got back to full speed, Indiana won some games. And again, you could always mention schedule and everything, but Indiana won games when X was playing well. And in a Coach Woodson system, when Hood Schifino was playing well, when X got hurt last year, and in the Big Ten tournament, then first year, X played well. Coach Woodson's system needs a really good point guard, and I think that would be the one for me that would say impact the most, because there's some other options if the bigs don't come where you can move some players and have some lineups that could do some things differently if you were forced to, if you don't get the bigs. The point guard is probably the number one issue for me. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and Coach Woodson's even talked about how like that point guard is an extension of him on the floor, and he gives his point guards a lot of gravity. Sometimes I think too much. He lets them call some offenses and things when I wish he would kind of reel them in and he would call kind of what he's seeing out there on the floor. And so I'm with you, man. Like, to me, just the point guard is such an important position that Indiana really has struggled with. If Miles Rice stays healthy, he's going to be the best point guard Indiana's had since Yogi Ferrell. I mean, he just is. He's just a stud. I recommend going to IUportaltracker.com and clicking the film link. I've got like a 5-minute film thing on him that's got some numbers and things behind him. He's so very good. And then if you can pair a Conwell with him, then you're talking about like the best backcourt in the Big Ten type of scenario. So like there are some things that could help you, cook with gas here if you're Woody. But I don't want to get too far out over my skis because as of right now, neither are committed.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump here to Matt's, and he has a long explanation for his question. And Matt, it's an excellent one, but I'm going to cut this a little bit short. But if we pick up 2 starters out of this 6 openings, there was some difficulty last year. Even Coach Woodson said with the learning curve of Mbako, and then he even said real late in the season, we're just now starting to learn how to play defense the way we want to and gel together. So he said, adapting to offense, defensive schemes what's the best path? Is it adapting offense and defense to the players you bring in? Or is it to rely on the veteran players to carry the load until the new players get up to steam? That's a great question, not only for Indiana basketball, but for every program. What do you do now when you have such high turnover as a coach? You have your way of playing, but you got so many guys. The best thing is to recruit guys to your system. But if you can't, what happens there? But last year it seemed like there was a long waiting time until Indiana gelled. It was game 28 basically until they really played outstanding basketball. They can't do that next year. You got to gel earlier. So your thoughts on that in general, and then maybe for Indiana.
Yeah, for me, it's if something isn't working, you have to be quick to stop doing it. And I think that can go a little bit with Woody's NBA mindset, where you've got 82 games to figure yourself out, figure out your identity. 10 games isn't much in an NBA season to try some things out, different lineups, different rotations. 10 games in a college basketball season, you're looking at 30% of your season being over. So for me, you want to try things out to your system. You want to coach and adapt and try to get guys to learn your system. But if something isn't working, be willing to throw that out quicker. Because to me, Indiana really started playing their best basketball when the rotation got shortened, and you weren't seeing those all bench lineups and things like that. Some of that was out of necessity because of injuries, but some of that was just Indiana knew it was do or die time. They had to win, and they locked in. And we've seen that really every Woody season. Like they make a run in February, as far as I can remember, every single season, or early March of Woody's tenure. And I think it's like he kind of does things that we all thought maybe should have happened a little bit earlier, like shortening the rotation, making sure that one of Trace Jackson-Davis or Race Thompson is on the floor at all times, or last season really kind of only using Peyton Sparks in short minutes, or going with a little bit of a smaller lineup with the Leal and the Mbako at the 3 and the 4, things like that. So to me, it's just being a little bit more willing to adapt to what the results are showing you. Just understanding and coaching to the metrics. And you can argue the merit of that all day and all night, whether the net or Ken Pom or Bart Torvik or whatever should dictate, tournament resumes and things like that. But at the end of the day, they do matter. So efficiency metrics matter. Go beat those low major, mid major teams by 30. Stay in the game, don't put your bench in with 7 minutes left in a 15-point game and let it balloon to 30. You have to coach to the metrics. You just do. So I think that's another big thing, because I created a spreadsheet basically last year where I had all the efficiency metrics baked into it, and I just changed some scores of some games to see what Indiana's efficiency margin would have been, which is what Ken Pom ranks you on. And just winning some of those games against mid-majors by 10 more points throughout 7 games, it moved them up to Ken Pom number 50 versus Ken Pom number 100. So as much as you may not like it, you got to coach to those metrics and 100%, because your metrics just got tanked this year by doing things like that.
Yeah, I agree, and it's always a learning. You got to be a lifelong learner. I point to, Underwood was a press and trap coach and got his butt beat the first 2 years he's in the Big Ten, and he changed. And then Dan Hurley at UConn was more of a defense and rebounding coach. Saw this on the weekend, and then he really started studying these overseas offense, and now they run some of the best offenses in college basketball, and are tough to guard. So you're constantly trying to find new ways and better ways to run your system, or to change your system. You have to constantly be an agent of appropriate change in the game of basketball. A couple more questions here for us tonight. And Mark, this is the last recruiting thing. He asked, can you speak of the importance of culture and how hard it is to build if you are always churning your roster? Culture is the most overused word in sports, but it is also probably one of the most important things in sports. And you can try to coach it and teach it, and you need to be good at it, but sometimes it just takes care of itself. Your locker room needs to be special. I think the Purdue and the UConn, going back to the championship game, those locker rooms were special. Those guys cared for each other. They fought for each other. You had sacrifice. You had people on Purdue who had played earlier, who kind of got recruited over a little bit and lost some roles. But we're happy to do so. You had some guys like Cam Spencer who transferred in and was willing to do nothing but basketball. I read something today where he not even on social media. He's just a gym rat. So it's very, 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 very important because if you don't have a good culture and you don't have a good work ethic and that desire to win, then you got a bunch of individual pieces who are playing for NIL money, who are playing for just to get better for their draft position, and the winning is not the important thing. But I do think the last part of your question, Mark, is very, very difficult when you're constantly turning it over. When did Coach Woodson have his best success? When you had 6-year senior in Race Thompson, you had Miller Kopp in his 5th year as a 2-year transfer, you had TJD, the best player, you had young kids come in and they were led by veteran presence, whether they were recruits from high school or they were Miller Kopp recruits. You had that combination. Indiana got a 4th seed. That's the closest that we can see a Mike Woodson program to these top 2 teams that were played for the championship. I think that's, to me, you got to get back to that. But culture is very, very important. You saw it at Indiana State. They had an outstanding year, hard to do for a mid-major. That's a good basketball conference. They were dominant and ran through some power conference teams in that NIT. So rank the importance, extremely important. Hard to manage at times because of the wild, wild west nature and the churning of roster. Very, very difficult. When you have it, you know it, and it just takes care of itself. The best teams I've been involved with, and at whatever level, the locker room took care of itself, and I could focus on the X's and O's and help do those things, and it just happened organically. And then you've had those teams that just ripped apart from the inside. They were selfish. The culture was bad, and maybe I had a part of that as coaching and didn't manage some things, but sometimes you feel helpless as a coach too because the culture just goes away. Your best coaches keep that culture going every year, as difficult as it is. Tony, your thoughts on the importance of culture and churning of the roster in this wild, wild west college basketball world?
Like you said, it's everything, but it's also not something that you just like pull out of thin air. It's doing consistency day to day, every single day, emphasizing the same things, praising the same things, disciplining the same things. There's all of those play a factor into creating a positive culture. And to me, it really comes down to the consistency of doing it day in, day out, across the board. Doesn't matter who did the good thing or who did the bad thing, keeping your praise or your discipline consistent. And like you said, it takes care of itself. And when you've got guys that buy into that same consistency and they hold each other accountable, which is another buzzword, accountability. The old saying is a player-led team is greater than a coach-led team. It's true. When coaches don't have to step in to do everything in terms of leadership, that's a great thing. And that's across every every business in the world. That's not just sports. That's culture is everywhere. I lead a company. That's one of the main things us and my leaders talk about every single day is how do we create a positive culture that people want to be a part of, and then when they want to be a part of it, they want others to be a part of it and thrive with them. Like that. That's what it all comes down to, and that's what makes it fun to like go on a national championship run. Because I've been a part of teams that won and the culture sucked and it wasn't fun. I've been a part of teams that have lost and weren't very good, and the culture was a ton of fun, and the kids were fun to be around, and I look back on those seasons fondly. So, like, it makes a big difference in the coach's life, too. Wins and losses mean a lot, don't get me wrong, but the culture means just as much, if not more.
And the coach is responsible for that. And sometimes you can control it and coach it and hold people accountable and do the right things, and the response is great. And other times you can do that same thing in a different group of kids. It's a whole different thing, and that's where Mark's question is so good.
The high school is harder because we can't pick. We don't get to pick who we're putting on the team for the most part.
The churning of rosters just adds to that volatility of that culture, and what we did last year might not work this year, and add that to the thousands of guys in the portal, and you see why Jay Wright got out, and you see why Roy Williams.
And you're trying to build those relationships that through regular recruitments you're building for years. You're still building that relationship once they're on campus.
Yeah, and then you think you got a guy for 2 or 3 or 4 years. Now it's like every year you got to re-recruit it. It is just culture is really good. The last question here is for all practical comes from T. Offerly. For all practical purposes, NCAA got rid of the charge last year. Traveling has morphed into only the most egregious moves getting called. What is the next evolution of NCAA basketball rule interpretation coming down the pike? Take that either what you think the NCAA is going to do or maybe what you would like to see the NCAA do as far as a new interpretation of any rule.
I liked what they did in the NIT and widen the lane and helping to create more space, keep guys out from under the rim. I liked that as a subtle tweak. I really, really wish that men's college basketball would move to quarters, and they would change their fouling. Sometimes teams get foul happy early in the half or whatever the case may be, and it just drags the game on because the team's in the bonus for 14, 15 minutes. If you have a quarter where that resets, you've got more opportunities to do things, which they've moved high school basketball to now as well. It does get rid of the 1-on-1, which, some people like, some people dislike. I could be swayed either way, but, I do wish they had quarters and got with literally every other level of basketball. At this point, I can't think of another level of basketball that plays halves. Can you?
Nope, not at all. I agree with you wholeheartedly on the quarters thing. That's solid. As far as I think that they really need to cut down on the offensive, the verticality from the offensive player as well. They've worked on the charge. They've worked on the principle of verticality on shots. But I see way too many offensive players leaning in out of their verticality, whether it be on a three-point shot. They've tried to eliminate that kick out of the leg. But on the drives now, they've tried to get rid of the old throw the head back stuff. But now shots that have no chance of going in are being called fouls because someone's just throwing their arms into a defender who is not sticking their hands out or not blocking their area. If you initiate that contact, whether the defender is in a defensive position or not, I would like to see that called a little bit more. I think that's something as well. The quarters thing is
one other that I would really love to see more than anything is reviews. Like if you look at it twice, you can't figure something out, make the call and let's move on. Or these conferences, they pump up how much money they're getting, have what the NBA does and have a headquarters where they're watching every single play. You just throw a headset on, they tell you what the call is, you move on. Like that is like what grinds my gears in college basketball games is the end of games, review after review after review that take forever and you lose all flow.
Yeah, every out of bounds, you get the review call every time.
I'm so tired of seeing the finger twirl.
Yeah, and now people are doing it at the 7-minute mark, and I'm like, come on, tell your team that you cannot review until under the 2-minute mark. It's crazy to me that people, players, coaches even don't understand that rule. But you got to go to a challenge late in the game, or official can say, no, I have that clear cut, and can deny the little just call. But that, and I've always been a proponent of this. Teams can't go to the bench during a review.
Right.
You have one official out at midcourt. Go to your respective circle. Players can coach each other, but because some people just do that just to get an extra timeout.
Oh yeah,
and you have
remember Jason Kidd having the guy knock his drink out of his hand to get a free timeout.
Exactly. I think that's ridiculous.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
Oh, okay, Ryan. Thanks. That's going to do it for us this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Thanks to Bob Thompson for producing our music, and thanks to John Ringer of rigdesign.com for designing our logos. And thank you for listening. Until then,
take it from me, Christian Wofford. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Coach Tonsoni is always right about basketball.
All right, that'll do it. Thanks, people, for all of you for joining in on a Thursday night. Hope we answered some of your question. I think Coach Adrani was all-star of the evening with this portal information. Hopefully we answered some of your questions and about that. It'll be a whirlwind here for the next 2 weeks to see who enters. Any more coaching changes and who enters. That closes quickly here in the next 2 or 3 weeks, right?
Yep.
Early May, right? And then
I think it's like May 1st, maybe.
Start seeing people make their decisions, if not already. But it's crazy out there, folks. Be careful. Duck, Don't always believe what you see on the X or the Twitter machine.
Yeah, I got fooled the other day on somebody posted something about Rick Pitino was getting in trouble for tampering. I quote tweeted it. I'm like, gosh damn it. The stupid blue check that somebody bought got me.
Yeah. It's just crazy. But anyway, we appreciate all of you. We're going to have a decent roster next year. We get to start over, a fresh start. It'll be fun and refreshing for all of us. We don't have to listen to some people up north brag too much about the national championship. They did play, and kudos to them, but they didn't get it done. So
still no banner obstructions, right?
That's right. Hey, good concert in Bloomington on Saturday. If you, I think tickets are still available down there. Baseball, IU baseball, starting to make a little bit of a turnaround.
Spring game a week from the night.
Spring game,
football.
A lot of good things. The Upstairs Pub has been a fantastic place. I'm going to be there tomorrow night. Was there a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to go see Kane Brown and John Party and Clayton Anderson in Memorial Stadium on Saturday. So I will be in and around town. If you want to buy me a beer, I'll be more than willing
I'm jealous,
to drink
Coach.
that beer. So
it's the weather this weekend looks beautiful.
Oh yeah, it is. It is going to be fantastic. Today was really awful here in Indiana. So, but be good, everybody. We appreciate you. Thanks, Tony. Excellent show. Just really appreciate what you do for us here at the Back Home Network and all of your knowledge and your film work and just talking to you, fellow coach. Fantastic conversation this evening. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that, Coach. Always a pleasure.
All right. We will see you guys later.
See you guys.